Well, Nich Maetsky, everyone. Good morning, my friends and relatives. I'm so
Chuck
happy.
Sams never dreamed he'd one day become the director of the National Park Service.
I laughed at the poor woman who asked if I had any interest in being the 19th director because I thought somebody set me up.
But his appointment in 2022, the first time the service would be led by an indigenous person, marked a turning point, not just for our national parks, but for Sams personally.
Is because they wanted me to come on the inside to see if we could really make a positive change.
Sams had been engaging with the federal government for years, but as an outsider. Over the course of his career, he's worked to make the government more responsive to the needs of Native people. And he's held them accountable when they failed to live up to their treaty obligations. But before he did any of that, he was just a kid growing up on the Umatilla Reservation in Northeast Oregon.
So I come from a very large family. My father had 9 other siblings, and I was very fortunate to grow up around both my paternal grandparents and maternal grandparents.
It was that upbringing, around so much tradition and tribal history, that planted the seeds of what Sams would become.
My own creation story tells me that my skin is from the hide of elk, my vision is from the eagle, my hearing is from the owl, that the roots and berries provided my nervous system, and that's how I was created as a human being.
It also instilled in him values he would carry with him throughout his career.
The last thing that we get is our voice, and that voice comes from salmon. But in return for getting that voice, we said that we would keep a covenant with the Creator, and that covenant would be to be the stewards of flora and fauna.
As a young man, he joined the military, working in intelligence on issues in Russia, the Middle East, and China. But he knew all along he wanted to get back to his roots.
I came home and knew that I wanted to do environmental work.
In the lead up to his position at the helm of the National Park Service, he rose through the ranks of tribal government on the Umatilla Reservation. He worked on renewable energy and salmon issues, and for former Governor Kate Brown. And though the jobs were different, there was a consistent through line.
Most people know I spent nearly 30 years actually throwing rocks at the Department of Interior about upholding their trust responsibility to the Confederate Tribes Umatilla Indian Reservation and to Indian tribes writ large.
Even though he's now working within the system, he brings that same ethos to overseeing the national parks. When he first started the job, he found a dearth of knowledge about the role of Native Americans in the country's wildest places.
So what I had realized in working with the staff, both in the National Park Service and across the Department of Interior, there was this gap of information and education.
But he also found an earnest desire to learn.
And it was amazing to me that once they had the information, how excited that they were to actually begin working with tribes in a new and an earnest way.
And Native folks are in a unique position to impart knowledge about some of America's most treasured areas.
Humans have had a relationship with this landscape that has been thousands of years old for a republic that is just now turning 250. Sometimes it boggles people's mind.
Now, the National Park Service is not small. It encompasses some 63 parks, but also 85 national monuments, 63 national historic sites, and 18 national recreational areas. But for all its size, the National Park Service is young compared to the people who have called those lands home for millennia.
What folks have called wild, we've always called home for at least 30,000 years or since time immemorial. And like any other humans, we've manipulated our landscape. We've experimented with what works and what doesn't work.
And now that knowledge, accumulated over thousands of years, is finding a home in the National Park Service. Sams has implemented nearly 150 co-stewardship and co-management agreements with tribes and parks across the country.
We're able to bring those stories to life that have been laying dormant for a very long time.
It's something he's proud of, to be sure, but it all stems from his upbringing in Oregon.
Everything from a coastline to old forest growth, rainforests, to high desert and high plateau areas. I couldn't think of a better place to be from or to grow up in, to have a strong understanding of how ecosystems function. We are a part of our environment. The land is us and we are the land.